This'll be a fun one. Okay, so everyone here knows that race is a lie, right? Or at least it's a social construct, something that doesn't have any actual roots in, objective reality, right? We're all on the same page with that? Cool. Have you ever taken one of those genetics tests that supposedly tells you where your ancestors came from? What was originally a worthwhile endeavor in supporting the Human Genome Project has become something of a commercial scam. They're pretty inaccurate because, you can't tell someone's ethnicity just based on genes. It's all probabilistic. Bill Nye did a pretty cool segment on it for his newish series. Basically, he, as someone with known, overwhelmingly Scandinavian heritage, he barely had any Germanic heritage touched on in his results. He more or less concluded that ancestry DNA tests are pseudoscience. But the real reason, the even worse reason that I haven't taken one of these tests myself, is the fact that they will only test human DNA. That's right. If you're a weasel, they just won't test you. If you call their customer support asking where your result is, they just hang up on you after telling you you're not as funny as you think you are. Rude. But this video is about race, ethnicity, and culture. What are these things? Well, first of all, race is a socially assigned construct. It's like gender in that it isn't a material reality, it's socially constructed, but different because, unlike gender, it's something that you're given by the people around you. Like, for instance, if you're white, people see you as white. It doesn't matter how much you wish you were black, how black you feel, because your whiteness is something that's assigned for you. It isn't a self-identity with a performative component like gender is. And generally, if you found this video, you probably already know that race is pretty arbitrary. You might be a white American now and part of the dominant culture, but if you've got red hair and freckles, in the 19th century you were considered anything but. In Old Norse texts, the foreign, typically enslaved people referred to as black were people not with black skin, but with black hair. So it's pretty concretely ambiguous. Race is a social construct, not an ethnic one, and is assigned to you by your social surroundings. And that's all I'm going to say about race, but we still all, come from somewhere, right? Maybe we can't read it in our genes, but obviously, someone with, say, Japanese ancestry is ethnically Japanese. They have a claim to Japanese culture because that's where their family comes from, right? People with certain African heritages have a right to those cultural practices because they know who they are because, well, they look like it. Right? Yeah, this sounds like something I'm totally gonna get shut down for. Liberals are gonna fucking bulldoze me, so tell you what, I'll go over my heritage. All jokes aside, I actually haven't gotten a DNA test, but I am blessed to come from a family that knows its history. And I have a background in a field in anthropology, so I have those connections and I know how to use them. Wait, did I say anthropology? I meant mustelopology. Yeah, you're not getting my actual history. You're getting a perfect 100% honest zoomorphic metaphor of my actual history. Now, you might think I just want to avoid offending anyone, or I don't want to make it easier to dox me when I get famous, or I'm just a flamin' fucking furry, and you would be right on all counts. But I promise you this is my real family history, just in allegory. And while you're watching this video, please try not to think about what the allegory is specifically for. I don't want you to spend the whole time puzzling over what real-world human groups I'm alluding to. This video is about culture, race, and ethnicity in general, and the whole point is to not get muddled up in specifics. Just go with it. Got it? Cool. So, I'm a ferret, right? We've established this. It's in the name. Comrade ferret. I live in a ferret-centric culture. I speak ferret. I look well enough like a ferret. In all my time on this channel, plugging it everywhere I can and plenty of places where I can't, no one has ever gone,
bro, do you realize you're, not a ferret?
That would be rude. Or at least it would be rude, except for the fact that I'm not a ferret. My family on both sides comes from a long line of pine martens. European ones, not American ones. I can point out traits to you if you like. You know how people have like hair color, eye color, cheekbones and stuff? Well, pine martens have sort of eye markings right here, see? And of course this big blonde throat that lines up really nicely with my jacket so you don't tend to notice. But really, any Mustaline version of a racial scientist would say,
Yes. Classic pine marten. Very pure pine marten heritage in this specimen.
except, once again, they'd be wrong. You see, I lied a little there. I am a ferret. Yeah, I'm 12.5% ferret. My great-grandfather was, in fact, a ferret. He had some stoat in him too, but my family, who prides itself in its ferretness, as being the first ferrets to settle in the area, and, colonize the indigenous people that had been living there for hundreds of years, you bet! My family really elevates this guy. And for good reasons, too. He was something of a war hero. He fought in the Second World War and was captured by Nazis, not once, but twice. And in typical ferret fashion, both times he escaped to continue to fight again afterwards. Absolute mad ferret, my granddad. Now you might think that this is the end of my stupid little family history. I call myself a ferret because of the culture I was brought up in, but by the geographical origin of the large majority of my relatives, and by appearance, I'm a pine marten. My last name even, it sounds ferret, but it's actually a sort of ferretized version of a pine marten last name. So the question on every liberal and race realist's mind is, which is my culture? The race realists, we'll just call him a racist. The racist would say,
No, you're still a pine marten, just not pure. You should still seek out your pine marten heritage and return to that.
My source? I used to hang out with a lot of these people, and that's what they told me. To them, no matter what, I'm Comrade Pine Marten. Liberals are more, liberal. They'd say,
Sure, you were raised in a ferret culture, so you're a ferret, just like us. But you're ethnically a pine marten, and so you should honor that too.
To which I go, hang on, I lied again. That's not actually the end of my stupid little family history. You see, I've got another great-grandfather who was, get this, a skunk. Yeah, and believe it or not, I have had people point out my skunk traits to me, and yes, it was very rude. But apparently they're there when people are looking for them for some reason. So, between the skunk side, the ferret side, and the pine marten side, I'm becoming quite the little hodgepodge of ethnic backgrounds here. Turns out I'm only 75% pine marten. Now, in comes our race realist again.
But you're still majority pine marten. Most of your family is originally from Pine Marten land, and importantly, your last name is Pine Marten, so you are patrilineally a pine marten, ergo pine marten.
It isn't. Yeah, I lied again. Okay, it sounds ferret. Yet was originally in the Pine Marten language, but that's as far as my family went with its knowledge of its own history. Now, it's a rather uncommon last name, so that's understandable, but I wanted to know. I put my oh-so-useful education in etymology to work, and then made a few contacts to verify what I was finding, because what I was finding was absolutely hilarious. Sables are, well, they look like martens, but they're not. Like, oh god, if you ask anybody, sables are definitely not pine martens, or ferrets, or anything of the sort. My family, honestly, a lot of the ferret world has a thing against sables. Whole lot of sables on the news, whole lot of sable refugees that give racists a reason to be angry. And you know where this is going. My last name literally means sable. An explicitly religious member of the sable community. The sablest of sables. And it turns out, in around the 15th century, an absolute ton of sables settled around the area my patrilineal family is supposed to be from. That means, 500 years ago, my family was going through the same struggle. They said, we're in Pine Marten country. We're Pine Martens. But there was then this question of,
oh, but are you really? You came from way over in Sable country.
Now again, remember, don't think about what this sable allegory is for. What we're talking about is an ethnic group that is historically and presently oppressed and vilified by the dominant culture. And it doesn't really matter which ethnic group in particular I'm referring to. That's not the point. The point is coming, okay? Okay. Back to our racist and our liberal. For both, I think we might have hit a bit of a snag. If I went ahead and said, I am a sable, even though it may well be the majority of my ethnicity, if I ask either one of them if it's okay if I adopt the sable culture, the sable religion, oh no, it's not okay, not at all. The liberals would say,
no, it's too far back there.
I've lost my connection, whatever that means. And it would be cultural appropriation. They wouldn't say that about, say, my skunk side. Even though I never met my skunk great-grandfather and never been to skunk country, and skunk culture is super different, we're kind of permeated with skunk culture. I'd just be another skunk weeb, and that would be fine. So why would they say that I can't be a sable? The reason is that sable culture doesn't seem to play nice with ours. The two don't mix. It's too distant, too foreign. Now our racist stutters and stumbles and is too busy trying to work out what all this mix of ethnicities from literally all over the Northern Hemisphere makes me. Both these people are trying urgently to link ethnicity to the right to culture, and neither of them really have a logical leg to stand on. The racist is, well, he's still trying to decide what percentage of each culture I'm allowed to engage in. The liberal is arbitrary. I can have ferret culture because...
You were raised in ferret culture.
Have Pine Marten culture because...
You look like a Pine Marten.
And I say my family came from there 3 generations back. Even maybe have skunk culture too, because, well...
Skunk culture is cool?
And a skunk in the family is probably good enough. But nope, can't be a sable, because when you get that far back, family stops mattering. Or something. The fact of the matter is, the race realist and the liberal are both racist. They're basing what they think I should be allowed culturally, at least partially, on how I look, and ultimately on how acceptable that culture is in the ferret world. The fact of the matter is, culture is what you're raised with. I'm sorry to say, but if you were born in a ferret-speaking country, even if both your parents come from an endless line of honey badgers, you don't have honey badger culture. Your ethnicity doesn't decide that. And ethnicity itself, a lot of the time, is really, really ambiguous. I'm not the only one with a story like this. I'll bet you that if you think you're just a ferret, if you did enough sleuthing, you'd discover that you're just as much of a mustaline potpourri as I am. So if ethnicity did decide culture, we might as well all just, embrace all culture. Realize that all culture has value and if respected appropriately can and should be learned about, embraced, and preserved by people all over the world. Because culture doesn't have genetic markers that you get mailed back to you after taking a DNA test. Cultural appropriation does not and never has meant embracing a culture that isn't your own, whatever the heck that means. Cultural appropriation is the misuse and exploitation of a culture. Wearing dreadlocks and calling them fairy locks is cultural appropriation because that shit doesn't exist and it's ignoring the culture of origin. Wearing Dakota headdresses is cultural appropriation because it's disrespecting the cultural and religious significance of them. Learning about aspirin from indigenous tribes and then tearing apart their willow trees and selling them is cultural appropriation because those are all colonized and exploited cultures that you're just exploiting more. And sables are currently undergoing genocide in several different parts of the world at this very moment. They're colonized and exploited, but if you figured out who the Sables are, I hope you'll join me in respectfully learning about and helping to preserve their languages, their cultures, their stories, maybe even parts of their ways of life and aesthetics. Because all that shouldn't be lost just because racists are too angry to not kill it and liberals are too cowardly to preserve it. It's okay. I'm Jesse, your comrade skunk, your comrade pine marten, your comrade sable, and for whatever it's worth, you have my permission to respectfully and empathetically engage with these or any culture you might happen to fall in love with. In our rapidly globalizing, homogenizing world, we need as much internationalism and multiculturalism as we can get.
Hey, just a little note before I go. I'm really new to all of this, new to animating, new to YouTube, new to everything. These videos take anywhere between 30 and 40 hours to write the script, compose the slides and backgrounds, animate the model, not even counting the sometimes days of rendering time. So if you've watched up to this point, you like what I have to say, maybe you think I'm cute, maybe you just want to spite the YouTube algorithm, give me a thumbs up, give me a sub. This channel is tiny at the moment, so every stupid little uptick helps me get out there and feel like folks are enjoying my content. So thanks again to the artist of this piece of fan art. You know who you are, still my favorite thing. And thank you, as always, for watching and for hearing me out. Bye now.